The following story is one of the most famous Icelandic ghost stories. In Icelandic folklore, the ghosts often speak in verse, repeating the last word of each line. Furthermore, ghosts are not able to say the word God in any form, or Guð in Icelandic. The story takes place at Christmas in the north of Iceland and features an unnamed Deacon, his fiancée Guðrún, and his horse Faxi. There once was a Deacon who lived on a farm called Myrká, Dark River, in Eyjafjörður, north of Iceland. His name is not known, but he was engaged to a woman whose name was Guðrún. Guðrún was a servant at a vicarage in Bægisá farm close by, on the other side of the river Hörgá. The Deacon had a grey horse with a thick mane that he called Faxi, which he rode wherever he went. Sometimes before Christmas, the Deacon arrived at Bægisá, inviting Guðrún to join the festivities at Myrká on Christmas Eve. The Deacon spent the night, and when he bid Guðrún farewell the next morning, he said he would come to pick her up on Christmas Eve, in time for the celebrations. The days before the Deacon's visit, heavy snow had fallen, and the weather was frosty, and a thick layer of ice covered Hörgá River, which ran between the two farms. Then there was a sudden thaw and snowmelt, causing the water level of Hörgá to rise considerably and the ice to break, making the river impassable. When the Deacon rode back to Myrká, he didn't take into consideration the sudden weather change and thought he could ride across Hörgá on the ice. But the river was no longer frozen, and so the Deacon rode up along the river until he found a spot which was still icy all the way to the other bank. The Deacon rode into the ice, but mid-river the ice broke and he fell down into the river. The next morning, a farmer from Þúfuvellir, a neighboring farm, saw the horse with a bridle and saddle outside his fence and recognized the Deacon's Faxi. This made him concerned, because he had noticed that the Deacon rode to Bægisá the day before, but hadn't seen him return. The farmer approached Faxi, wet and shivering, and suspected the worst. He walked along Hörgá, looking for the Deacon, and eventually found him dead at the riverbank. The farmer went to Myrká and gave the people there the tragic news. When they came to pick up the body, they noticed that the back of the Deacon's head was severely wounded, probably from a block of ice which had hit the Deacon's head after he had fallen into the river. The Deacon was buried at Myrká a week before Christmas. From the fateful day, the Deacon left Bægisá, and until Christmas Eve, Hörgá had remained impassable, so no one could have informed Guðrún about the passing of her fiancé. However, on Christmas Eve, the weather had turned calm and cool, and Guðrún started to look forward to the party at Myrká. In the afternoon, Guðrún started getting ready and was almost finished when she heard a knock on the door. Someone else answered, but there was no one outside. Darkness had fallen, but the moon was full, casting an eerie glow over the landscape whenever there was a hole in the cloud cover. Guðrún told the girl who had answered the door that she would go outside. She grabbed her coat in a rush, but only put on one of the sleeves, but slung the other over her shoulder. Outside, Guðrún saw Faxi in front of the door and a man standing next to the horse, whom she took to be the Deacon. They didn't speak, but the man held Guðrún up on Faxi's back and then mounted the horse himself sitting in front of her. They rode off, and neither of them uttered a single word. When they had almost reached Hörgá, they rode up a hill, and when Faxi ran down the other side, the deacon's hat lifted. At the same time, the moon broke through the clouds, lighting up the deacon's naked skull. Then he broke the silence. The moon glides. Death rides. Can't you see a white spot in the back of my head? Garún, Garún. Terrified, Guðrún realized that the deacon must surely be dead, because he could no longer say the first part of her name, Guð or God. I see what is, she responded, and then fell silent again. When they arrived at Myrká, the deacon stopped outside the graveyard and said, Wait here, Garún, Garún, while I take Faxi away from the yard. The deacon left the horse, and Guðrún looked into the graveyard. There she noticed an open grave and became frightened. She ran towards the church and grabbed the bell cord. Suddenly the deacon was back, grabbing her from the behind, trying to pull her into the grave. Guðrún was lucky that she had been in such a rush to put her coat on, because the deacon grabbed a hold of the loose sleeve and pulled so hard that he tore it off at the seams. The deacon fell backwards into the grave, still holding on to the torn sleeve, and the dirt was swept in from both sides. Frantically, Guðrún rang the church bells until the people of Myrká came running. They took her inside the farm and told her what had happened to the deacon. That same night, after Guðrún was in bed and the lights had been turned off, the deacon's ghost returned, tormenting Guðrún. Terrified, she screamed, waking everyone. The ghost disappeared, but always returned after dark, and Guðrún could never be left alone at night. Eventually, a sorcerer from Skagafjörður in northwest Iceland was called to Myrká. He ordered that a huge rock to be dug up and moved to the farm. In the evening, after darkness had fallen, the deacon arrived and tried to enter the farm, but the sorcerer started chanting, barring the deacon entrance, making the ghost retreat south of the farm and disappear into the ground. The sorcerer then rolled the rock on the top, and there the deacon remains, trapped till this day. After this, there was no haunting at Myrká, and Guðrún returned to Bægisá. However, she never fully recovered from the ordeal. Traditionally, you end the story in Iceland by saying, Köttur út í mýri, sett upp á sér stýri, úti ævintýri.